This is Cast of Wonders, the fiction audio magazine for young adults featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome! Today, we present The Next Joe Jones by Russ Colson. He lives with his wife Mary on a farmstead in northern Minnesota, far enough from city lights to see the Milky Way and the Aurora Borealis. He teaches planetary science, meteorology and geology at Minnesota State University Moorhead. He writes a variety of speculative fiction and non-fiction pieces that have appeared in Neo-Opsis Science Fiction magazine, Clarkesworld, NewMyths.com and others. You can find out more in a NewMyths.com interview done with Russ. The picture for today's episode is by HotSoup25 on Flickr, who kindly gave us permission to use it. Thanks. And now, we've a tale to tell. The Next Joe Jones by Russ Colson. Before the experiment failed, everyone expected Joe Jones to be the next Einstein. Now I couldn't dig up enough to write a high school term paper. Why couldn't Mr. Butler assign me Stephen Hawking or Sarah Amundsen? Unlike Jones, Amundsen actually succeeded with interdimensional travel, although through space rather than time. The northwest wind carried a bite after last night's storms. The plastic roses someone poked into the ground beside the gravestone looked battered, and the vase of cut peonies lay on its side. I bent over and set it right, although the water had mostly drained. Probably wouldn't last until Memorial Day. I ran my fingers over the blocky lettering in the stone. Loving husband, father and friend. Why had Jones walked away? Did he choose that? Or did he learn something he wasn't supposed to know and someone wanted him out of the spotlight? There was plenty of info until he hit 25 and the great experiment came to nothing, or so they said, and Joe Jones disappeared from public eye. The playground ditty ran through my mind. So, Joe, where'd you go? What did you see and what do you know? All that effort, all that dough? Tell us, Joe, what's the show? Unkind. Like children are. Must have hurt him here in his hometown, especially after such high expectations. At least we remembered him. Maybe that's why he came back after retiring. Clearly, someone was still leaving flowers. Grandkids, maybe. He had a granddaughter, a writer, who lived outside of town. Amazing she cared enough after so many years. Maybe I should talk to her, or somebody else who knew him. I'd heard that old lady Carlson had some stories. I rose and walked down 5th to Main, past the grain elevator, and proceeded towards the Carlson place at the north end of town. Pretty Tara Redcloud spotted me from across the street when she came out of the variety store. She waved. "You going to be at Ben's birthday party tonight?" she hollered. I shrugged. "Don't know. Got to get this report done." "I'll be there." She turned her head just so and played with a strand of black hair before heading south towards Donna's ice cream place at the corner. I watched her. Nice girl. Smart too. I rather liked her and thought she liked me, but I'd never pursued it. Too much else to do if I was going to get that scholarship at the U. I paused at the park where the town put up a memorial plaque. "Who will be the next Joe Jones?" it asked in bold letters. Even after the experiment failed and all the political fallout, he remained a hometown favourite son. Embarrassing. Sure, he started out with a bang, but he ended as a minor scientist spending his time teaching students at that small college back east. How could that compare with a journey to alternate futures? It must have failed, like they said. Why else would he walk away? Who wouldn't want to know the best possible future and how to get there? I certainly wanted to know. The military had wanted to know too. That's how the project got so much money. At the time, nearly 15% of GDP. Old lady Carlson was home. She offered me cookies, but I declined. He and his wife took us church kids camping every summer, she said, until her health gave out. Always had friends from his days at the college coming to visit. She didn't know anything about his science. She suggested I talk to Terrell Benson at the variety store. The little bell over the door rang when I entered, and the wood floorboards creaked under my step. The store was old, like Mr. Benson. The smell of dust and plastic picked up my heart rate, involving memories of childhood visits when all the cool stuff seemed so exciting. Yeah, I knew Joe, he said. When I was a kid, he used to take me to the park and we'd feed the geese together. Told me about his work on the Super Collider. I didn't bother to point out that work, all his work after the experiment, was pretty pedestrian. Only sounded big in our little town. What about the experiment, I asked. Did he ever talk about the best possible future? Mr. Benson scratched his head. I asked him once. He just looked off into the distance, which he did a lot, and said, it's different for everybody. Benson had other warm, fuzzy stories, like Old Lady Carlson. No stories of real accomplishment. Even so, I left with a nagging feeling that something should be making sense. The experiment failed, right? Otherwise Jones wouldn't have walked away. Certainly the military wouldn't have walked away, despite the cost and all the politicians who lost elections. But then they said that Jones really vanished during the experiment, right out of the sealed room. Where'd he go? If he really saw alternate futures and could pick any of them, why would he pick the one he lived? Why not pick the one where he had the greatest impact on the world? I stepped into the sunlight and turned toward home, but froze as a thought struck me. Maybe he did. Maybe a quiet life of teaching and family in the long run had a greater impact than spectacular discoveries. I recalled the words on his tombstone and what Carlson and Benson had to say. Relationship. That's what the people he knew remembered. Maybe the flowers at the grave told a deeper story than Jones' entry in Wikipedia. Ben Dybert caught up with me at the old railroad tracks. Hey Joe, you coming tonight? I hesitated. I still didn't have a report, but Tara was going to be there. Maybe my best future, like the other Joes, included something more than career success. Sure, heard myself say, I'd love to come. There'd be time enough for my report. And so ends the next Joe Jones. Come tell us what you thought of the story in the forums at castofwonders.org/forums. We'd love to hear from you. Cast of Wonders is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license, which means share it all you like, but don't change it or sell it. Theme is Appeal to Heavens by Alexei Nov from musicalley.com.